I don't think that love is lost. I think it's like anything else. It can be fed and it'll grow. It can be starved and it can die. I think 60% of divorces are ended because of either finances, or 40% it's because of communication, or it could be the opposite. Communication, or the lack of, or unmet expectations, usually financial. Those are usually the contention points for most divorces.
You know, feelings come and feelings go, but you have to choose to love daily. And so love is not just a feeling, it's an action. You know, the Bible talks about love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast. All those things, I think that you have to take steps to choose love daily. Welcome to the Collective Talk podcast, where we share reflections on prayer, family, and ministry. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about staying married versus getting married. And I'm so excited because we have my very special guest who he happens to be my husband. He's my favorite guest ever, but he is on the show today. So can you help me welcome Pastor Mark Francey on the show? Oh,
Is that ringing any bells right
Yes, that's my special. I love that you brought this today. So do you want to talk about the story about how we already shared the story in season 1?
We did celebrate it, season 1.
We did.
And it's when you fell for me. I got a giant teddy bear. It was actually much bigger than our sloth friends here.
Yeah, it was bigger. We thought this was a koala, guys. Apparently it's not a koala. It's a sloth. And Mark brought this in. And
actually, I didn't. It was just already in their studio. I don't know where it came from. I don't know who spent money on this thing.
Yeah.
But,
no, actually, I think it's like the college boys. Some of the college boys.
Okay.
It's one of theirs. How crazy is that?
Maybe they're in love too.
Yeah, maybe.
It worked for their pastor. It could work for them.
Work. So basically, if you did not watch season 1, you need to go back and watch. I think it's the very first episode, or it could have been the second one we were on together, where Mark and I talked about how we met. And I actually didn't know he liked me. He was in love with me, but no, I didn't know that he liked me. My sister's like, he loves you, Rachelle. He's like, really likes you a lot. And I'm like, no. Mark's just friendly to everybody. And so he comes in uninvited to my birthday.
That was Applebee's. You know, you can't deny Applebee's.
Yeah, you definitely can't. The Blondies, was that what they were called?
Yes. I like the Blondies.
Yes.
For sure.
And so he comes in with a life-size bear bigger than this one and brings it to me. And at that moment, it worked.
You knew I was the one.
Because I knew you were the one, because you brought me the life-size bear.
Without question.
Yes. So today, this is a reminder to maybe get a life-size bear for the one that you want to be with, and maybe they'll just want to be with you. It worked for us. It worked for us. So I'm so honored that you're on the show today.
Always a high pleasure.
Always a high pleasure. So I just wanted to talk about the difference in staying married versus getting married.
Yeah.
Like the difference between when, everybody talks about the wedding, like girls growing up, like I had a book that was all about the wedding day. Mm-hmm. I had the colors, I had, my bridesmaids all picked out, what I was going to do. I wanted it to be a fall wedding. And so girls plan forever.
Yeah.
I know guys just come to the wedding, but girls, they plan forever for their wedding day. So what would you say is the difference between that day and staying married?
Yeah.
What would you say are some differences, or what? Yeah.
I like the premise of the question because I think it kind of exposes a crack in our culture's foundation that we put more energy into making the perfect day with the perfect cake and dress and tux and venue and flowers and. I think that I didn't realize, we obviously got married, went through that process. Yeah. And when we did, we had this incredible wedding. Thank you to your parents for teeing that up for us. But we had this beautiful wedding. And it wasn't until I went through that process, I didn't realize how much went into that day, making it so special. But it wasn't until I was on the other side of it that I became, a pastor, started officiating weddings. that I realized, man, people are okay spending $50,000 on a day, but they won't invest $500 into premarital counseling to set up a lifetime of a healthy marriage. And it was interesting in that moment, I realized, man, there's a crack in our foundation that we put more energy into the day of our wedding than we do actually preparing ourselves for the life that follows that day. And I think that's why in America we have beautiful weddings, but we have terrible marriages. Is the emphasis is on the Disneyland fairy tale happily ever after. We just think that if we can get to that day, if I wear the right dress, if those glass slippers fit, the rest of our life's going to be magical. And I think there's a lot of, fractured expectations that come along with this mentality. And it's epidemic right now in America. I think the average cost of a wedding right now is like $38,000 in America. That's probably thanks to some of our friends in Orange County hiking up that average, that curve. But people spend a fortune on weddings. They don't really, they complain when they spend $12 on a book that would teach them wisdom on how to have a good marriage.
That's so, wow. It's crazy how a lot of people, they spend so much money on the wedding, but they don't do any premarital. You don't see any of that. So that's so good what you were saying. So what are some of the biggest surprises once the wedding was over and marriage set in? Like, what would you say?
Good or bad or
both?
What?
Both. But don't say a lot of the bad.
Surprises. I don't know. I think my favorite surprise was just I underestimated how much I was going to enjoy waking up next to you every day.
Oh, that's
I
so
think
sweet.
you don't realize how incomplete you are until you get married. And there's a contentment that comes in the life of being single. I think that you got to embrace that season of life, that grace. But when you get married, you're like, wow. It's kind of like pre-kids, post-kids. Before you have kids, you're like, oh man, this is going to be great when we have kids. Life's good though. But after you have kids, you're like, I don't really remember my life before I had kids. And I think the same would be true of marriage is, I heard one man say that you're incomplete before you get married. And then after you get married, you're really finished.
Oh my
and so,
gosh.
It's a joke, but no, I loved it. It was an awesome surprise to just feel like you have a second side of your brain that you didn't have before. You're so good at everything that I wasn't good at. And a lot of people know our story that, I gave my life to Jesus at 18. I was so broken in so many areas, even impurity, coming out of pornography addictions and all the things that I grew up captive in. And you were so pure. You never held a guy's hand. You never seen anything. You never seen you didn't even see a naked guy before. And it's wild that you came from such a pure context. I came from such a screwed up context. And simultaneously there was surprises that I was good at things that you weren't good at. And just to see the compliment there. And I was surprised that I didn't realize how much I needed you to be my fashion consultant to help me evolve in what clothes I was going to wear.
When we got married, I think that we had to get used to, not just, when you were living with your dad at the time and I was living with my parents. So when we bought our house and we moved in.
Which was a miracle.
Which was a huge miracle. It was so cool. That's a whole story. And we bought that house and it was so cool putting all of our furniture together, which we didn't have anything. And so, but it was cool. Like, I didn't cook, finding out all the giftings that we both had. Thank God Mark was a cook because...
Thank God you weren't a cook.
Oh, why?
Well, I would have been super heavy.
Oh, okay.
I already gained, I have a slow metabolism. So if you'd have been a good cook, I'd have been on The Biggest Loser for sure.
Oh my gosh.
No doubt.
Well, now I feel like that's how I was though, because he was such a good cook. And so he would barbecue and, but anyway, we found out each other's giftings. Like, I'm not a good cook. He is. I feel like cleaner than you, would you say?
Jury's out.
Okay. And so you just learn all of those things. But I think that, it's so important, just the process of staying married and the differences. And I think that you have to just, love each other's differences as well. So I think that's really good. What one thing Do you think that when we first got married, did you like it annoyed you?
It annoyed me.
Yeah.
There was nothing.
Nothing. You're being
No.
nice. Do you remember?
I joke about this a lot, but I
Yeah.
think I tried to disciple you on which direction the toilet paper roll is supposed to go on to the wall.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be cascading like a waterfall, and you'd always put it on backwards, and you would strangle the toothpaste. Just for sure, I'm like, you're supposed to go from the bottom of the tube all the way up. And so there were some things I was OCD on. You were so good at keeping certain things clean, like you were always good about keeping like our room clean. We get the living room, the dishes. I was better at keeping our cars clean. And it's kind of funny that we even complimented each other in that way.
Yeah.
But definitely had our differences, our strengths.
Yeah. So can you share with everyone a challenge maybe that we went through the first year in marriage? What was one challenge that maybe that we had to navigate in our first year of marriage?
Well, I think most people underestimate. They think that when you get married, the broken areas or the immature areas of your life are automatically going to be solved.
Yeah.
I think the most common thing that young guys think is that when I get married, if I have a pornography addiction, if I have some sort of lust issue, that in the context of marriage, that's going to be immediately solved and rectified. For me, I realized that wasn't true. I think for you coming in, you were living with your parents. They were phenomenal parents, but I think you not really ever having to have a budget coming in, in that regard. I was on my own since I was 18, kind of living autonomous financially, and so I think you financially coming into it were young, and I think for me, I was coming out into it broken. And so those are probably, I think, the hardest, would you agree on that?
Yes.
The first year was we didn't make much money at all. I was a janitor, you're a youth pastor. So how do we make ends meet financially? And to go from, hey, you can spend your entire paycheck because you live at home, to now it's like, girl, you are the breadwinner. I'm a janitor. We gotta make this money stretch. And I think for me, learning how to be honest with you about, hey, there's some stuff that's fundamentally broken inside of me. I know you didn't ask for it, sign up for it. You weren't looking for this element to have to marry a guy that's still 13 in some areas of his mind. But you were so gracious, forgiving. And I think that the learning how to be honest with our weaknesses was probably the first major mountain that we had to climb together. And I think that's probably the norm for the first 24 months of marriage.
Yeah.
Is you have the dating version, the engaged version that you fall in love with, and you get married to find out, wait, there's some areas, and this is what I would say is most people get divorced over the 10% they don't like. They fall in love over the 90% they do like. So I think you get to the wedding day, you're focused solely on the 90% that I love. And I think when you get married, you realize, wait, there's 10% of my spouse that's not healthy or not mature or is under construction. And so most people that get unhealthy, they start focusing 90% of their fulfillment on the 10% that drives them crazy. And I think that's what creates major problems in marriage.
That's really good. In your experience, what do you think are the most misunderstood, common misunderstandings within marriage, or that married couples have with staying married? What do you think are the misunderstandings with staying married?
I think a common thing we hear a lot as pastors is, well, I just stopped loving your dad, or I stopped loving my wife. And they tell their kids that, look, mommy and daddy are getting divorced because we no longer love each other. And I lost love. I fell out of love. I don't think that love is lost. I think it's like anything else. It can be fed and it'll grow. It can be starved and it can die. And I think when it pertains to, you feel like there is a deficiency in the romance, in the connection, in your love for each other, I think the most common misconception of marriage is that we lose love. I don't think you misplace it. I don't think it's like, hey, I knew it was around here somewhere. It's not like losing your keys. I think love is not lost. It's literally like you not eating for weeks, months, years at a time, then go, hey, where did my health go? Well, your health left slowly as you neglected feeding your body. And I think that's what we talked to a lot of couples about is love is at its best when it's intentionally fed.
That's good.
And I would say the more fragile or immature your love is, the more intentional. Like a baby, you have to be with feeding it. When our girls were little, we've seen, the movies when parents are feeding their little babies, you put them in the high chair, you carve out a time, you go, look, it's time to feed our kids. You put them in the high chair, you get the intentional meal you have prepared for them, you put it on the spoon, and you start doing the annoying parent lip thing that you're like open your lips and eat the food. And there's an intentional feeding because of the state and the size of your child. And I think when you feel like your love is in an immature or a very fragile condition, it requires that level of intentionality that you have to create a space, a time, something to feed it, and to actually give it your effort in causing it to grow.
It's good. It's really good. That's powerful. I want to transition to just communication. I felt like that was a big key in our marriage and learning how to communicate well. And sometimes we didn't do that so well. And so, yeah, well, you're a great communicator. Maybe it was all me, but I just felt like that is something that's really key in maintaining a healthy marriage and staying married. So what would you say to married couples that about open communication, staying honest, staying open, and communication, and what role that plays in staying married?
Yeah. I think it's everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I think it's 60% of divorces are ended because of either finances, or 40% it's because of communication, or it could be the opposite. Mm-hmm. Communication or the lack of, or unmet expectations, usually financial. Those are usually the contention points for most divorces. So I think being good at vocalizing your expectations is critical in any marriage. And you can't hold your spouse hostage for the ransom you've never vocalized. So I think getting good at just going, hey, Rachelle, this is kind of what I'm expectation-wise for the week. This is what I have going on. What do you have going on? I think getting good at being honest with each other about schedule. I think being honest about needs. I'm shocked. I mean, me and you, we talk to people all the time that are in severe deficiencies in their marriage, whether it's their love life, whether they haven't been intimate in a long time, whether they haven't taken a date in 6 years. And they get into this rhythm of life that they know it's not healthy, but no one has the wherewithal to actually vocalize, hey, why have we not done something special? Yeah. Why have we not been intimate? What's our excuse for living and tolerating this really unhealthy rhythm? And so I think I think a lot of times it falls to the man to go, hey, look, something's out. It's your job to go, hey, something's not working right. My wife seems shut down. Our family seems off access. Our balance is not healthy right now. God gave you a great brain inside of your head to actually think about what can we do to fix this. So a lot of times it starts with just saying, let's talk about where we're at right now. Yeah. Because I think what I found is no one usually says, hey, let's get divorced. Let's not try. Let's have a bad marriage. I think those things happen because we refuse to communicate. So I found that if you can get your spouse, this has been our experience, if we can go, I think we're under attack right now because we're not being either wise, maybe we are being attacked spiritually, or maybe we're just tired and we've been distracted. Let's sit down and talk about how can we make our life better. And I think you create a conversation that, hey, we're gonna communicate things that we're gonna do this week. We're gonna go on a date on Tuesday. We're gonna take Friday night, which is tonight. We're gonna relax down with our family. I think vocalizing with each other, and now you guys have a goal and a vision to go after. Most people, they lose hope, not when life gets hard, but because they lose vision when life's hard. So I think communication is actually a way that we communicate, where do we wanna go? Where are we? What do we have to do to get there? And if we can have a clear vision, we can live through some pretty serious storms.
That's so good. That's such a great tip. And how do you vulnerability. I just wanted to talk about that with your spouse. Like, how do we stay vulnerable with each other, and how do we do that during difficult, maybe things that you're going through within your marriage that are difficult, hard to navigate through? How do you stay vulnerable in those type of situations?
I think it's one of the hardest things to do long term. I think the first key to staying vulnerable is make up your mind that you're not going to live with excuses.
That's good.
I think a lot of times we start making excuses for why we're not going to be honest. I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to make this week worse than it already is. And so, I think vulnerability has to start with, in my opinion, with God. And if I'm not being honest with Jesus in my prayer times, I have found I'm not going to be honest with anybody else.
Yeah.
And so if I can keep my heart clean and transparent with him, and a lot of times I find that when I'm honest with Jesus about the areas of my life that I'm frustrated with, when I'm confessing those to him, not only do I feel his love and I feel his hope, a lot of times we'll leave those moments with him with a solution of going, hey, I want you now to talk to Rachelle about this.
Yeah.
I want you to apologize to this person. I want you to forgive. And he'll give you the things that he wants you to be honest about.
Yeah.
Almost like action items to be vulnerable about after that prayer time. And so I think vulnerability with your spouse starts with vulnerability with God. And I think in both instances, it requires you making up your mind that I'm not going to make excuses when I'm not healthy.
Yeah.
I'm going to make changes.
Yeah.
And you usually can't do both.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that make excuses. Well, I'm just an angry person, or I just keep it real, or I just say it as it is, or I'm just a bit of a pervert. You can't own things that Jesus died to actually heal us from.
Yeah.
And so I made up my mind a long time ago. I told you this, that I can't promise you that I came from a good place, but I can promise you that I'm going to end in a good place, because I will die fighting to live for the freedom that Jesus paid to give me. So yeah, that's been our journey.
It's beautiful. And don't you think that vulnerability and forgiveness kind of go hand in hand? I know a lot of couples that we talk to, or even our own experience in our marriage, that the more forgiving we are, the more vulnerable we both will be to each other. And I think that if we're consistently staying in a place of forgiveness, if one, say you did something to me and that happened within, the first couple of years of our marriage, we would do things or say things, and we would have to choose forgiveness. Yeah. And then it was amazing, because in that forgiveness, we kept wanting to be vulnerable. Yeah. And I think a lot of spouses try to hold it over their spouse's head, like, I'm not going to forgive you. Yeah. And
I want revenge.
I want revenge, and I want to hold that over your head. Yeah. But then their spouse goes cold, and they don't want to open up anymore. They check out. And so I know in our marriage, there were times where, we got in fights, and there was things that happened or said, and I learned forgiveness within marriage. I had to forgive you. You learned forgiveness. You had to forgive me, and so we kept staying forgiving, but also vulnerable. And so I thought, so how do you think that goes hand in hand, forgiveness and vulnerability?
I think they're absolutely connected. And you're right. I think I was able to be vulnerable because of the quality of your willingness to forgive. And I think that's what I would say that would be a healthy two-edged sword or two-sided coin to great marriages is, we talked last season about our policy of the 100% honesty, 100% forgiveness. But I think there's something about transparency that leads to freedom. And I think that freedom and forgiveness are connected. That, Jesus said, you'll know the truth will set you free. So there's truth, which is honesty, and his word that leads to freedom. And I think there's something in the freedom that requires us to be, it allows us, I should say, it allows us to be honest. When we get free, I always tell people, that God has set you free from something when you can talk about something that you should feel shame or embarrassed about, but you're so far removed from where you were that you can now talk about it without the sting of that old thing marking your identity today. It's almost like a thief trying to rob your house that you moved out of. It's like, I don't live there anymore. You can rob it all you want. I'm gone. And I think that's what I feel like when you get free in an area, because God forgives you, you can actually talk vulnerably and freely about anything. And so, yeah, I think great marriages are committed to going, hey, look, I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to be forgiving with me. We're going to reciprocate that. And ultimately, I think in those two flows of forgiveness and honesty, the last thing that you kind of have to see is someone has to be mature enough to break the cycle.
That's good.
And I think we're younger. We're both competitive. We're both leaders. We could be both hard-headed. And I think for us, making up our minds that the winner is the person that chooses to break the cycle and forgive first. And you usually won that because you were softer hearted than I was. But I think there's something powerful about, hey, if I keep on not forgiving and you keep on not forgiving, we're going to be in a stalemate for another 2 days. So one of us has to be mature enough to break the cycle and go, I'm going to forgive you before I feel like it, or before maybe you deserve it. And so we can move on and keep on, start the cycle of health again. And so I think marriage is really two people committed to being honest and two people being committed for a lifetime of going, I'm going to be forgiving as you're honest.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I feel like forgiveness is the key to marriage.
Key to life.
The key to life. It is. So many people just choose not to forgive, and forgiveness is hard. It really, truly is. It's a daily thing that you have to walk out. And I think that, forgiveness doesn't change your past, but it literally enlarges your future.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that a happy marriage is a union of two good forgivers.
Yeah.
And I think that
Absolutely.
when we come together, like you were talking about, and we try to compete with one another and say sorry first, I think that is a happy marriage. And so Mark and I, we've learned that. We've learned to, Jesus forgave us, and we've got to forgive one another. But I think that's so important in a happy marriage. But I wanted to ask you about prioritizing our marriage. Like, what things did we do when we first were married, and even now, in prioritizing our marriage? What are some tips that you can give to people watching?
Well, sometimes it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
I know we're in a busy season right now. But our goal has been, since we got married, a couple things is we decided that whatever we do as a family, we're going to do it together. And we never wanted to feel like we had like a church life and a different life, a home life, a business life. We wanted to incorporate all that we did in with our kids. We're going to do this together. We're going to build the house of God together. So I think family was a priority that we wanted to be in agreement that we were going to do that collectively. I think one of the other priorities that we've tried to really make it our aim is we got to have a time every week that we're intentional with our kids, that we have, and we try to do family dinners on Monday nights. We'll cook together. We try to sit together at the table. That's been a priority that we've tried to always fight for. And I think even with having a date night, and the last couple months been more challenging. It was so good. Even just the other night, we got to go. We kind of had two this week.
Yeah.
One was awesome, kind of accidental, and then the other was intentional.
Yeah.
But there's something I think about just creating a space to fill up each other's love tank. The difference between being tired in your marriage and being depleted in your marriage. And I think there's a lot of, being tired physically, you can take a nap and solve that problem. Being depleted is when you got to re-energize your spirit.
Yeah.
And that's not solved by a nap. That's solved by the presence of God, by replenishing your spirit. I think the same thing is true with your relationship, that you can get tired in your communication with your spouse. Maybe you need to take a nap, maybe you need to read your Bible. And maybe that you're not just tired, you're depleted. And that might require you actually carving out a significant little window to actually fill up each other's love tank again. And so we're pretty intentional.
Yeah.
We do probably three or four trips a year, just the two of us.
Yes.
Could be 2 nights, 1 night, 4 nights. Usually your birthday or anniversary, that we just get away. We dream together. We lay together a lot. Hello.
Yeah. Hey.
And we start praying about what's coming up next in the future. And we come back from those trips and we're so connected again.
Yeah.
So I think prioritizing that, man, people say, how would you spend that much money on going to a hotel in town when you can stay at your house? That's expensive. I'm like, divorce is way more expensive than investing into good date nights in some rhythmic staycations or vacations that you can get away with your spouse and reconnect. So
good.
I think if your marriage is strong, and by the way, the greatest thing you can give your kids, we know this, is a great marriage. It's a marriage on fire. And so I want Kenzie and Chloe to know what their husbands should treat them like by the way I treat their mom. And if I had boys, I'd say the same thing. I want you to know how your wife should be by the way your mom loves me.
So good.
And so I think that if we have that in order, we're going to build strong kids. And everything we touch, if we're healthy in our marriage, everything that we touch is going to be healthy.
So good. I love that. And I think another thing is choosing love daily. I think that's, feelings come and feelings go, but you have to choose to love daily.
You do.
And so love is not just a feeling, but it's to choose it every day.
It's an action.
It's an action.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, the Bible talks about love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, all those things. I think that it is an action. You have to take steps to choose love daily.
Yes.
And I think that's not just for married couples, but it's for, being a Christian, being a disciple. You have to learn and choose love.
Yeah.
Because our feelings sometimes we wake up in the morning and we feel like, oh my gosh, I'm tired today. I don't want to choose love today.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning and you have a headache or something and you're not feeling well and you have to choose love. You have people that will come at you and say negative things, or your spouse or your friendships, and people will say things or do things, and you have to choose love daily.
That's right.
And so I think one of the things that Mark and I are really big on is choosing love daily. It's you have to walk it out. And I grew up playing basketball, and my coach always talked about, you can talk the talk, but you have to walk it out. You have to, you could talk a big game like you're so great at basketball, but you have to be disciplined. You have to walk the walk, and you have to choose, to get better at basketball.
Yeah.
And the same goes for your marriage. You have to choose to love each other daily. And so what are some things that we do to choose love daily?
I think a couple of things that we've tried to incorporate. I heard this a couple of years ago, and I thought it was so brilliant. But one of the guys that kind of mentored me a lot, he said, whenever you think about something good about your spouse, vocalize it. I think sometimes we're silent about the things that we should celebrate. And I think all of us need to hear every once in a while what we love about each other. And so I think being intentional with just vocalizing, when you think about something like, hey, your hair looks beautiful today, Rachelle. Like, man, thank you for cleaning up my side of the sink today. I noticed that you organized that. Thank you for doing that. You're so sweet. Rachelle, you're a really awesome mom. I think, we were just laying in bed the other night and I was telling you some of those things, but I think remembering that we all need to hear that you're still the best decision I've made. I think that when your spouse reminds you of that,
right?
Because I think the problem is many times the longer you're married, the less you vocalize what you love and the more you vocalize the things you don't love. And that's usually when marriages get negative. I could call it the law of deposit, is that when you actually take more out of your spouse through correction than what you put into them through affirmation, like your checking account, if you keep pulling money out and you don't put money back into it, that account goes negative. And I think most people have negative marriages because they're pulling more out of their spouse through correction. Why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? You did that wrong. You left that open. You left the front door unlocked. You didn't close the garage. You didn't feed the dog. You didn't, and we vocalize everything that we don't like, as opposed to going, you know what, you did way more right today than you did wrong. And so I think for me, I could be nitpicky with some of that stuff. And so I had to be intentional going, I want to show Rachelle love today by saying what I do celebrate, and maybe holding on to some of the things that I could make a big deal about that actually aren't big deals. Yeah. I don't want to feed the birds. You know, you go to the park sometimes, they say don't feed the birds. You go to the beach, they say don't feed the birds. And I think that when we make big deals about the little things that bother us about our spouse, you're feeding the birds. And the more you feed the birds, the more birds that seem to show up. And pretty soon you got an army of birds sitting around you. And you're like, what in the world? Is my marriage even good anymore? Because you fed the birds too long. So I would say stop feeding the birds. And to the last kind of thought with that is, you said that, you know, how do you show love daily? I think you got to make up your mind sometimes that you can act your way into love faster.
That's good.
Then you can feel your way into love. We were counseling a couple just recently, and they hadn't been intimate in a long time, even romantically. And we said, look, you guys need to forgive each other. You need to pray for each other. You need to have some fun together, you know, dream about the future. And you guys need to lay together. You guys need to reconnect. And someone has to be intentional to go, we're going to break this unhealthy pattern. I might not feel it yet. I might have the butterflies that I want to kiss you and I want to hold you, or I want you to hold me or kiss me. But there's something about sometimes acting your way into a right frame of mind rather than isolating yourself and being a victim and staying as you are. So I think that's one of the best things you can do for love is to act your way into what you know is right and watch the right feelings follow.
It's so good. So powerful. I think that what you're talking about is revisiting your vows. It's basically, why did you choose your spouse in the first place? And so just remind yourself, oh my gosh, I love this about Mark, or you love this about me. And so remind yourself on a daily basis why I chose, you know, why we chose each other. And I think that's really important in marriage. Well, hey, I wanted to do something fun. And as we end this episode, I thought it would, I've seen this on Instagram, but I don't know if we can, I mean.
Famous last words.
Yeah, famous last words. But I thought we could do where you basically hum and we look at each other. I feel like since we've been married like 19 years, we could look at each other and we could hum the right note. Maybe. So I'll do 1, 2, 3. He's like, what am I getting into? I'll say 1, 2, 3. Oh no. What are you going to say?
I'm just getting ready to la 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 la
okay.
la la la.
Okay. So I'll say 1, 2, 3, and then on 3 we'll hum a note. Okay? And we'll try to hum the same note, right? Do you understand?
I guess.
Okay, we'll do it like a couple times and see if one time get the same, like we're on the same wavelength, right? Okay, so here we go. Let's try, guys. We'll see if we can do this. And you can try this at home. I think it's so fun to have fun with your spouse and like do fun things and just be fun together. Mark makes me laugh more than anybody, so I think it's fun to just switch things up, have fun together, and make each other laugh. So here we go. So 1, 2, 3. Oh, so close. It was a harmony.
That was pretty much it. You just did it with your mouth open. Mine was closed.
Okay, you got to open your mouth. Why were you closing your
I
mouth?
don't have a good voice.
You do. Just open it up. Let it just be free.
I'm going to sing.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Yes.
We got it.
We got it. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3.
You copied me.
I copied you.
You copied me that time.
Okay, I'll do another one. I cheated. Okay, we'll do it. 1, 2, 3. Did I copy you again?
I don't know. I think I'm making the same noise over and over again, just in 3 octaves.
Well, I'm proud of ourselves. We did one.
That was pretty powerful.
That was like really good.
That touched my heart.
I feel like if we've been married 19 years, you guys, we should like be on the same wavelength, but that was really good. Thanks for participating.
You know it.
Love you. Well, thank you for being on the show today. I'm so excited that we got to talk about marriage and maintaining a godly marriage. And so thank you.
My honor. I love you, babe.
You're my favorite.
You're the best.
Love you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Collective Talk, where we shared reflections on marriage. Stay tuned for future episodes where we dive into the topics of prayer, family, and ministry.